that's why I think at the end of Clinton's, toward the end of, about the time he was being impeached, that's when he had the sea change in U.S. policy toward China. Under Clinton, and actually under George H.W. Bush, we had basically maintained an attitude of let's be nice to these guys, we'll all get along, they'll behave, we can all coexist, blah, blah, blah. Let's be nice.
We'll even help them with
knowledge. We got most favored nation status. Bush 1 got him most favored nation status. Clinton renewed it twice. But by the end of the 90s, it was clear the Chinese, it's just the nature of things. They're going to extend geopolitical dominance if they can. And they're going to lie, cheat, and steal on their trade agreements. I mean, they're basically pursuing a brutally classic mercantilist trade strategy to beggar thy neighbor, snarf up as much hard currency as they can, build up their military might, and someday down the road, after being nice for a long time, they'll be in a position where they could call the shots on the confrontation with the United States somehow or other.
Over Taiwan especially.
Or whatever. I mean, there's a whole slew of potential flashpoints along there, which I detail in the book. In fact, the Chinese thought they had probably 20 years to get ready for this, according to one diplomat that I talked to.
Do you think there was any treason involved here?
Well, I don't know about treason. I think it was just venality, just selling stuff. We need the money. I don't think that anybody had, malign intentions necessarily against the U.S. government, but I think they were desperate for cash, and they were willing to sell whatever they could, and the Chinese were ready buyers. So it was just a natural scheme of things, and I think
greed got it.
Yeah, that's what drove it. Rather mindless, I think, but stupid. And the Chinese were right there to buy this stuff. I mean, the Chinese have waged a concerted espionage effort against the United States, from computer hacking to compromising people to just infiltrating all of it. I mean, the Justice Department's gone ballistic about this stuff, and the Commerce Department has had like 400 different investigations going on about Chinese secrecy thefts. I mean, so this is another dimension of economic warfare going on right under our noses here. This is the way things happen. But I think the Chinese thought they had 20 years to get strong to the point where they could provoke and win a confrontation with the U.S. And I think the national security establishment looked at that and said, we're going to turn this clock forward. We're going to push it up on them. And one way you do that is raise the price of oil, raise the cost of all their industrial inputs, and slow down their economy. So they don't have as much time as they thought to get strong. And I think that it was starting to bite. I think it was starting to have an effect. And I think that, in the last year or so, the Chinese actually did relent on a number of things. They made nice with Taiwan. They made nice with Japan over an East China Sea dispute, although that may be falling apart now. They finally relented to try and increase the value of the currency at a faster rate, but they've backtracked on that too. So, I think that things are not good between the U.S. and China. I don't care how happy-faced they look on the surface. I think under the table, they're kicking each other in the shins like mad.
I agree. Hey, by the way, Hillary forgives a $13 million loan to her campaign. Where did she get that kind of money?
Some book deal. She probably was on your show hawking her book.
No, she wasn't on this one.
Let me tell you, as a book author, this is no way to make a lot of money. It's you do it for just the love of truth. But for these celebrities who get these huge book deals, where do these books end up? Does anybody actually buy them? I don't know.
That is a good. You know what? I've got a book out with a partner of mine, and it did okay, but man, not like that.
No.
I mean, it was just
another way to launder money into the pockets of the high and the mighty here. You give them a bogus book deal and slap their picture on the cover, and they can take the check to the bank.
It is amazing, truly amazing. But through all this. We'll get into Enron a little bit later. But through all this, what are the key points that you have now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, convinced yourself is going on?
Well, I have no doubt that we wrecked the Soviets with low oil prices. And I think that we perfected those mechanisms to the point that we were able to use them in reverse against China. I think that there is serious economic warfare going on. I think whenever you look at these hellacious economic events going on, you got to keep in the back of your mind, is this a manifestation of economic warfare by somebody against somebody else? And it's hard to tell who's throwing the rocks here sometimes, or who windows gets busted, but it explains a lot. And events are not as random as they might appear to be.
Jeez.
And markets can be managed. Not all the time, not every market, but at key points, critical intervention can move these markets. They can be out of whack, sometimes for protracted periods of time.
I think we're going to have a slow first quarter, and then we're going to have a whip-around effect. And I don't know how long it'll last, James, but I think they're going to push it back up again.
You know, I wondered about where it's going to go. I think basically the fundamentals on oil prices are still weak. Commodity prices are still weak. I think I think we're going to see a lot more pain before things get better. I think that.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think we're going for the jugular on this. Putin's regime will be gone within a year or so.
Do you think all this is based on going to get Putin, even at letting us bleed?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. We bleed. They hemorrhage.
Yeah.
And I think China is going to blow up too. And China is sitting. My view of China is it's really a house of cards. I mean, they have hitched their wagon to basically 19th century industrial strategies of building up steel plants, aluminum plants, They've taken over all of these dirty industries. The only way to justify the investments there is if they massively export this stuff. The world is not going to put up with that. They've financed themselves with massive amounts of bad loans in their banks. Like 40% of the assets in their banks are non-performing loans. They desperately need to get recapitalized. What you've seen now is an unexpected drop in their exports. Now, this is extremely worrisome because they've been growing at like 20 or 30% a year. For them to go to zero is bad enough, but actually drop, this is troubling. Unemployment rising, bank problems, and if you start to see a capital outflow from China, the whole thing could just implode.
So, you know, it's kind of like trying to drown someone, and you're underwater with them, and you know you can hold your breath longer than they can.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what the telltale thing.
What a horrible analogy.
If you started to see bank runs in China, I mean, it's curtains for those guys. In fact, there was a bank run in Hong Kong, and Li Ka-shing stepped in. Basically recapitalized the bank himself and told everybody in town, look, if you don't play along with this, you'll never do business in Hong Kong again. So, yeah, they were apoplectic about that, and they moved quickly to staunch that problem. But it could break out again elsewhere in China, I think.
What would you recommend American people do right now, James?
For investments, you mean?
Oh, just with their own personal financial lifestyle.
Well, I would say, as always, you know, live within your means, eschew debt, invest conservatively, don't try to get rich quick, work for a living, and pray to God.
And do a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
A lot of prayer. Quickie on Enron, how'd you decide to pinpoint that?
Well, you know, I've been watching Enron for a long time and had avoided writing about it because I didn't want to get sucked into all the hoopla about that company because people have been telling me it's a house of cards and nobody could quite figure out why that was. But finally, when Jeff Skilling abruptly quit in the middle of '01, I said, okay, I'm going to go after this company. He wouldn't be quitting unless there was a big problem there.
Yeah.
So I went at it and looked at it and said, you know.
And we've just seen what Putin is doing with natural gas out of Russia.